What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and the ongoing Stellar Blade war is ramping up to new heights as quite a lot has happened in such a short period of time. I'm drowning in information here, but today we'll go over the censorship claims, woke journalists celebrating it, and even some weirdos calling for people like Grums to be taken out Hitman style. And I also want to touch on the blatant hypocrisy of the woke liberal journalists who champion censorship while staying quiet whenever it doesn't fit their agenda. You'll see what I mean. Beyond that, we have the Tomb Raider censorship ordeal reaching an interesting turn and much more. But first, I've been playing Stellar Blade myself. I'm currently in the Wasteland area of the game, which is the big sand area. You've likely seen it in trailers. So far, I would say the game is very fun to play, but also, surprisingly, not nearly as hard as I thought it would be either. Beta skills pretty much destroy everything, especially the beta skills Triplet and Slash, which can pretty much cancel out every enemy's attack animation, including bosses. As you're seeing on screen here, as I fight an early boss, I am just wrecking them, dude. And again, the game isn't hard, but man is it fun. Also, in more good news, Stellar Blade has already surpassed 1 million copies sold on PlayStation 5, and that's great to see. So the future of this series is bright already, and I wouldn't be surprised if Shift Up and Sony announces a sequel. But they're going to have to first fix this whole censorship problem, so let's get into that now. From Bounding into Comics, we have this article titled, Stellar Blade Director Responds After Patch Censors Holiday Rabbit Outfit, Claims Updated Design Was Always Intended as Final Version. So this whole hashtag Free Stellar Blade movement, which was started by Grums by the way, was due to an outfit in the game being censored after the Day 1 patch. Here's the original bunny outfit prior to the Day 1 patch. As you can see here, Eve's chest is not covered and cleavage is shown. But once the patch was implemented, here's the new outfit, which now has a shirt underneath covering the cleavage. The creator of Stellar Blade and CEO of Shift Up, whose name is Hwang Tae Kim, was at a livestream celebration for the launch of his game, where he was then asked by someone attending the event about the censorship claims that have begun to stir. A thread on Reddit had the dialogue translated, so here's what Kim said regarding the situation, and I quote, "Understandably, we also recognize this issue. However, the final costume that we wanted to show you is indeed the costume in version 1.0.0.2. I want to clarify that is our final product. However, I know this answer is not enough to convince our users. There is an internal discussion ongoing regarding this, so I think we'll have a chance to answer it soon." End quote. So he confirms the way the outfit looks is what was intended from the get-go, and he could be telling the truth, of course. I mean, things do change in development all the time. But of course, this isn't enough for many customers who instead believe Kim was strong-armed by Sony into doing this. During one interview, Kim was being interviewed at Shift Up's HQ with Nier creator Yoko Taro sitting in the same interview, to which the interviewer then asked, "Speaking of which, Mr. Kim, I wanted to ask you if there were any fights with Sony Interactive Entertainment since they are publishing Stellar Blade." Kim then apparently looked at his staff nervously and said the people at Sony are very nice, which is, could be there's a lot going on there than we know about. And then Yoko Taro, being the king he is, then replied, "Sony Interactive Entertainment staff members are pulling faces I've never seen before. I wish the readers of this article could see it." And of course, Taro would know exactly what Kim is going through, since his games like Drakengard and Nier have obviously had to challenge the same censorship and company policies that Kim and the Stellar Blade team are facing right now. And having put quite a few hours already into the game, and I've also 100%ed in Platinum Nier Automata, I can tell you that Stellar Blade has a lot of the same DNA as Taro's series, in a good way I mean. The music, the combat, even the fact both games have large sand environments, it just feels like I'm playing Nier again. The unfortunate truth is that companies tend to censor things all the time for all manner of stupid reasons. As one user named Zyle Harkin on Twitter posted, a bunch of things Sony has in the past censored from not even Korean devs, but all kinds. Stuff like Martha is Dead, which is a horror game, and here's what they had to censor for Sony, as they said here. "It is with regret that we have to modify the experience on the PS5 and PS4 versions with some elements no longer playable. After over 4 years of passion and hard work, developer LA now requires extra time to make these unplanned changes." Martha is Dead, as a result, will still launch digitally on both PS5 and PS4, but the physical retail release will be delayed to a yet-to-be-disclosed date. Although we anticipate this to only be a small number of weeks, we will update the players with the date we ship this edition as soon as we have the information. The PC and Xbox versions of Martha's Dead are both unaffected by these developments and will launch with the full unedited gameplay as planned. Then we have Senran Kagura, which was also censored by Sony and removed the intimacy mode, and then we also have Omega Labyrinth being censored on PS4 but not on Switch, which is very weird. It feels as if Sony has some woke morons in some ethics department that is ruining things like this on purpose in order to push an agenda. But what's very odd to me and others is that Sony is inconsistent when it comes to these censors. Since many of their AAA Western offerings like Ghost of Tsushima or The Last of Us Part 2 are not censored whatsoever. Could it be because a game like The Last of Us Part 2 stars ugly mongoloid women and the sex scenes and immense gore is integral to the plot? Maybe. But then again, it does seem that a lot of the censorship seems to come from Asian-made games going to the West and usually not the other way around. Then of course there's games like Baldur's Gate 3, which was not censored whatsoever and arguably features far more risque elements to it than something like Stellar Blade. You can even modify your genitals in games like Baldur's Gate or even Cyberpunk 2077, which again was not censored, at least to my knowledge anyway. And it proves that the hypocrisy does not only stop and end with companies, but it's people who work in the industry too. For example, there's an employee at GameSpot named Jessica Cogswell. Don't harass this person by the way, but they spoke on Grumps' petition surrounding Stellar Blade and said this: "This is the most unhinged behavior I've seen in quite some time, and I have a 2-year-old. But people were quick to find older tweets from this Jessica lady and shows her bias when it comes to how censorship is pushed in equal measure across the industry. For example here, where Jessica celebrates how she was able to champion and speak on the sexual content within games like Baldur's Gate, where she said, "Incredibly happy with the list we compiled and that I was able to not only write at length about Baldur's Gate 3, but include a conungulous joke as well. God bless video games." It doesn't end there though. She would continue by saying, an important Starfield thing no one is talking about, way more genital options than Baldur's Gate. And some of those schlongs are truly massive, can't express how impressive they look when you're visiting low-gravity planets. It's very interesting that Jessica here is championing the size of genitals and how they look and operate, but is condoning other people who don't want censorship in their games. And of course, here she is saying that Hades is her game of the year, even though she's never played it herself, but simply thinks it's game of the year because of the character designs, with one of them of course being Aphrodite, who is a trans-looking woman who is barely covered themselves, but of course, that fits their agenda, so it's totally fine. So for someone like Jessica, who is very evidently pro-sexual content, it's very bizarre how she is rolling her eyes and attempting to dunk on others when content that is also sexualized is being censored. If anything, she should be standing alongside those who want that sort of content. But of course, due to echo chambers and all of that, she can't do that or she'll probably get excommunicated from GameSpot, and her friends, who all unironically say they're allies, will just cry and run to HR if she were to defend something like Stellar Blade, akin to how she did for those other games. But notice how every game with pro-sexual content, whether it's Baldur's Gate, Starfield, or Hades, they all have one thing in common that Stellar Blade doesn't. That's right, they're Western made, and that's the big reason for censorship, and I've been noticing it more that Asian games get censored quite often. But Western games, it's totally fine, although I will admit I did see some online discussion surrounding Stellar Blade allegedly toning down its blood effects and gore, but what was not given in the context was the shots of the mass gore were done in graphics mode, whereas the less gore was from performance mode. Why this matters is simply because obviously one prioritizes 60 FPS and the other the graphical fidelity, so you have one or the other. And obviously, if you pick for a stable 60 FPS, you'll lose some of that detail, so naturally some of the blood might be less in that mode, so that's likely why, but I can't say 100%. Although when it comes to blood in games in general, I would prefer if games just gave me an option in the menu to turn it off or at least tone it down at the very least. Especially when it comes to YouTube videos, the algorithm just hates gore and blood, so if you hadn't noticed, I usually go out of my way to not show blood simply cause it's YouTube. Believe me, I would love to showcase some gameplay from games I've played where I shoot someone in the head and their brains explode like confetti, but YouTube, unfortunately, is pro-censorship in that regard. Even some parts of Stellar Blade, I have to black and white filter because the blood is too much for YouTube, so trust me when I say I hate censorship as well. Because I have to deal with it literally all the time when I'm making things like this very same video. But I think what a lot of these people who are pro-censorship and anti-Gamergate is that they're hypocrites, and I think we should not be celebrating any game being censored in any regard, no matter what. In my opinion, if your game is rated M for mature, which Stellar Blade is, then censorship should just not exist. I don't care how graphic your game is, how much nudity or blood or anything else, if it says M for mature, then it's all hands off. Rated T for teen or below, obviously yeah, okay, don't show genitals and stuff because it's obviously meant for people under the legal age, I get that. But it makes zero sense when it's done in games with ratings designed for that very same reason in the first place. And for anyone who says, why do you guys care so much about the sexual content or something, it's kind of beside the point. The reason why there is an uproar is because content is being censored, period. It doesn't matter what it is, it just shouldn't be happening regardless. As well, since the game is confirmed a week before release to be uncensored everywhere, then people started noticing little things that are being censored, so yeah, it's going to cause a stir. Because you can't promote your product and then remove or change things after purchase is made. Because now what you've changed is not what was promised prior to the purchase. It would be like buying a scary horror game with tons of gore and monsters. But once you buy it, they remove most of the blood and leave only a few monsters. Obviously, that wouldn't be good, and that's not only censorship, but it's lying too. It's bad business practices 101, and I think that's what people fail to understand here. It's less about the nudity and more simply about silencing freedom of expression and, giving what you advertised. And this next story is just ridiculous, so to give you some context, one of the people who's against the Stellar Blade's sexiness is a Games Radar writer named Austin Wood, who wrote one article titled "Stellar Blade puts Eve in some incredibly stupid sexy outfits that hurts the game's story. But despite the forced sex appeal, I actually love her detailed design." I covered this article in my previous video. The guy is apparently asexual and thinks Eve's sexiness is corny. I don't take the opinion of a guy who refers to himself as asexual seriously, but anyway, the same guy also wrote this other article titled, "The Baldur's Gate 3 patch notes didn't mention the most important change, but players sure found it, dick physics." As you can see, yet again we have a Western journalist being upset about an Eastern game showcasing sexuality, yet celebrating when a Western game does the exact same thing. And a friend of the channel, whose name is Madam Savvy, responded to the hypocrisy of this Games Radar journalist's double standards. Give her a follow, by the way, she's a nice lady. Anyway, here's what Savvy said about the Stellar Blade discourse, and I quote, "People see hypocrisy, and every single person who tries to boil down the current online conversation to gamer chuds just want over-sexualized women in games is a shallow, single-celled organism who thoroughly doesn't have the capacity to have a conversation. We are, at the end of the day, all human within the same biological hardwiring. We naturally are drawn to certain markers that will influence art, product sales, creation, imagination, etc. Our eyes want to look at appealing things, our brains crave beauty, from a rising sun saturated in colors to the idealistic form of a human and all the uniqueness that makes them stunning works of art. The sexy outfits don't hurt anything. It's okay to just be positive or even neutral about something. In the exact same manner that it should be okay to notice the things mentioned in the second headline. Both the design and exaggeration of Eve should be fine, just as should all the imaginary and visionary of Baldur's Gate 3. But for whatever reason, clickbait bloggers have given themselves this imaginary moral authority to decide which is fine and which isn't, what hurts sales, which is void from facts and based in reality, and what is most important. These people would be much happier in life if they stopped cultivating this pathetic online discourse. By celebrating censorship and displaying blatant hypocrisy, they bring commentary upon themselves. No longer are these bloggers shielded from public response thanks to the way the internet works now. People can let them know just how they feel about their trashy words. They aren't needed anymore to bolster the sales of something because a single Twitch streamer is more effective than their bot-viewed website. No product should be subject to censorship anywhere. Every product should be able to be sold as the creator intended, and the free market should decide success. You are free, absolutely, to not like something and not buy it, but under the guise of a writer, at least pretend for the sake of the word journalism you have some sort of consistency or lack of bias. People will, thanks to this type of blatant hypocrisy, celebrate censorship when it happens to you. You caused this and bring it upon yourself. Instead of breaking from the narrative of groupthink, you feed into the same machine and no progress for anyone is ever made. Unlike these type, most normal people are completely okay with both things existing and wouldn't call one a problem over the other. Most people don't live their lives by the clickbait headlines. On top of that, most people online can get behind creative freedom for all. But cherry picking and purposeful dilution of words makes it seem like that isn't the case. Thanks to people like this, thanks to anyone who clickbaits and can't just be for creative freedom, we are here now. I celebrate storytelling, all forms, from jiggle physics on men and women to heartbreak stories to hentai to yaoi to yuri to straight whatever. It's all art, plot or no plot. Everyone has the capacity to create and share their work thanks to the internet, yet there are those cheering censorship. Insane. End quote. And Savvy put it beautifully there, it's blatant hypocrisy on every front, and the complete disregard of what matters and doesn't in the eyes of these writers is plain as day to see. You can't be upset about something when you're writing articles being happy about dick physics, even if you're some asexual weirdo journalist who likely lives somewhere like San Francisco. The point here is that we should all be against censorship of any kind. It's why I always say we should never silence others even if we disagree with them. You will never see me telling you to block somebody on Twitter or go after them or something, because that's not how we win anything. All that does is reduce us to the same pathetic level as those who want to destroy everything. I say let them speak even if they have opposing views, because most of the time, as evident on this channel, these morons just tell on themselves most of the time anyways. And beyond that, I want them to be able to express themselves freely, because I think the more people are able to witness the blatant hypocrisy of these individuals, the more people will open their eyes and abandon their crazy echo chambers in droves. I always tell viewers to never harass anyone, even though these people never have the same courtesy, but that's fine, because that's how we beat them, by not becoming as miserable as they are all the time. Most of these Western game journalists are guys who consume enough soy milk to drown a cow while waving at their girlfriends who leave to go hang out with their other boyfriends. These are the people we're up against. Genetic dead ends, as they say, but regardless, their ideas need to be combated, otherwise more soy milk infused journalists will be born in the future. And let's be real, most of these journos don't even do their jobs properly anyway, so people like me have to actually dig up the dirt and ask questions, otherwise nobody will. Don't get me wrong, there's still some actual game journalists out there like Gene Park or Jason Schreier, but the majority of them, yeah, just throw them in the bin. But it's very interesting how you'll see these journalists laugh at the Stellar Blade discourse, but they'll suspiciously be quiet when it happens on their side. Remember articles like these from last year titled "Sony Censors LGBT Content from Saudi Arabian Release of Marvel Spider-Man 2"? And when Spider-Man 2's LGBT content got censored from Middle Eastern countries, a lot of these journalists were either upset or said nothing at all because they didn't want to disturb the echo chamber. In my opinion, what happened to Spider-Man 2 there is just as bad as Stellar Blade, yet they'll try to tell you with a straight face that it's different, but it isn't. It's the same, and not only that, but proves that places like Sony and Insomniac are not even serious when it comes to the pandering anyways. Because if they actually did care about LGBT rights, they would refuse to remove the content, but they did it anyway because they obviously wanted Saudi Arabian money. That alone proves that woke devs like Insomniac care about their profits more than their own pandering. Yet why didn't Jessica Cogswell or Austin Wood report on that and rally to restore their precious LGBT content into Spider-Man? Because their morals are as flimsy as their paper straws they use to drink their overpriced lattes as they wear their Black Lives Matter face masks. These people are clowns. They don't have morals, they celebrate degeneracy like dick physics and Starfield genital options. But then they'll also roll their eyes when a little bit of cleavage is shown in a Korean game. You see what I'm saying? These people don't even just hate you, they want you gone. Actually, that also happened recently too. From thatparkplace.com, we have this article titled "Evil Individual Places $20,000 Bounty on Grums aka Mark Kern for Beginning Campaign to Uncensor Stellar Blade." Yeah, you heard that right. There was a user named Toneman who said this on Twitter. 20k to anyone that makes this dipshit disappear. So this Toneman guy quite literally advocated for Grums to be silenced or killed because of his opinions on video games. That's where we've gotten to. Of course, many people responded to this Toneman guy, and of course, if you go check his account, now he's deleted it. Because like always, these journalists and their supporters, they run with their tails between their legs because they can't take the criticism they so often dish out themselves. So when I say that these echo chambers, which are overrun with woke insane people, are wishing harm upon you and want you dead for speaking out, I mean it. Even Savvy shared a DM she got after speaking about censorship and that game's radar guy. Someone said to her, "We are going to do things to you that have never been done before." Very cool. So users are attempting to threaten Savvy as well for speaking her mind on a public platform. But this is what we have to deal with, and it's on a daily basis, by the way. I constantly have people saying I should end myself for speaking out, but that's okay because it just means that what me and others are doing is important. And it's not all for naught after all. Look at Tomb Raider. This article is from Niche Gamer and it's titled, Tomb Raider 1 through 3 Remastered Undoes Inadvertent Censorship. The developers have actually gone back in to bring back content that was censored thanks to fan feedback and the constant push from their community. Here's what Aspire, the devs behind the Tomb Raider remasters, had to say about it. Thank you to the Tomb Raider community for your continued feedback and support for Tomb Raider 1 through 3 Remastered starring Lara Croft. In the recently released patch 2, we made several texture and graphical updates to the HD version. As part of these updates, the posters in Sleeping with the Fishes, the Lost Artifact, were inadvertently removed in the HD version of the game. This has been resolved and these textures will be restored in patch 3. So it's good to see developers and publishers actually listening to their fanbase when it comes to things like this. And like I said, the Stellar Blade discourse is not because people are sad that my horny game is not as horny. It's simply because of censorship and the moronic pushes by companies. Look, I love Sony games. I've been a PlayStation fan pretty much my entire life, but even I have to admit that they make moronic choices from time to time. They don't always land, and they have made really dumb decisions like with Stellar Blade here when all they had to do was literally stay hands off completely. As for people boycotting the game, I would tell you to not do that. By not buying Stellar Blade, all you're doing is telling the market that you don't want more games like it in the future, and by not buying the game, you will actually help the narrative of these woke journalists instead. And then you'll see articles pop up like Stellar Blade fails, the Chuds have lost, or whatever. Besides, these minor changes, which again, according to Kim, the creator of Stellar Blade, they aren't censorship to begin with, but we'll know hopefully more in the future. But regardless, in my opinion, do not sleep on Stellar Blade. It's a great game. It runs flawlessly, it plays extremely well, and there's a lot of fun content and the gameplay is awesome. The characters are good so far, there's no annoying, ugly female characters whatsoever, no woke agenda pushing so far anyway that I can tell. And honestly, it feels like a PS2 era game in modern day in the best way possible. If you take anything away from this video, please understand that your voice is important and you have more power than you realize. Continue to ask questions, keep these people accountable, and speak your mind even if others tell you not to. Don't silence yourself and stand proud always. Stellar Blade is a great game and I think people should support it, so don't let this controversy dissuade you from enjoying an objectively great game. Play it, enjoy it, but keep your voice heard and always share your opinions. If you stay silent, nothing changes. When it comes to things like Gamergate 2 and all of that, we have to be louder than ever. So I thank you for watching, like, subscribe, and share the video, and thanks to my patrons as always. Have a wonderful day, enjoy video games, and I'll see you in the next one.